A lot of people have been asking this lately. What does Brexit mean for the dangerous goods sector in the UK? I think there's one thing to remember. There are two issues here. There's a political element and an economic element. The reasons for Brexit are all political. The vote was a political decision. A lot of the outcome of the vote was political on the part of a lot of voters, I'm sure. What we're left with is now a situation in where the political establishment doesn't really know what it wants anymore. The aim of the vote was to put an end to the schism in the ruling Conservative Party. Unfortunately, now we still have that same schism, except now it's not, are we in Europe or out of Europe? It's what sort of out of Europe do we want? Unfortunately, with only about 6 months to go before we're supposed to be out of Europe, we're no clearer, and that's a big problem for industry. So what do we know? Not much. The one thing we do know, because the Department for Transport has said so, is that the UK will continue to apply ADR for domestic as well as international road movements of dangerous goods, and will continue to apply RID to international and domestic rail transport of dangerous goods, possibly even ADN for inland waterways. ADR and RID, of course, are not EU documents, but the UK at the moment, within the EU, has to apply them to domestic transport through the Framework Directive. There is work going on to make the necessary changes to the legislation so that we reference directly the ADR agreement and RID rather than the EU directive. So that's good. You know, if you're complying with ADR now, you won't have to do anything else. Well, you just have to comply with the next edition of ADR when it comes out in January, or from July when it takes effect. Why the problems lie are in areas such as customs agreements, taxation, and drivers, and actual haulage operations. The Road Haulage Association and the Freight Transport Association have made urgent representations to government because they see that there's no resolution in place. UK hauliers only have access to a limited number, quite a small number, of permits to transport goods into the EU. If trade is going to continue, they'll need a hell of a lot more. The other question is drivers. At the moment, the UK is not alone in having a desperate shortage of heavy goods vehicle drivers, and in particular ADR qualified drivers. Now, a lot of that shortage at the moment is filled with drivers who are nationals of other EU nations. Now, will they be allowed still to continue working here? At the moment it's looking unlikely. So how are those roles going to be filled? It's not clear, and the young people of the UK, as in other countries, are showing a lack of willingness to take up roles as long distance lorry drivers in particular. More worrying, I think, is the issue of customs. At the moment there's a frictionless border between the UK and the rest of the EU. Goods just pass through, particularly at the channel ports, off ferries or the Eurotunnel, without customs checks. If that situation does not continue, and there's a lot of pressure for customs checks at the border, there are going to be hold-ups along the way. Some trade associations have been quoting very worrying figures, that there could be 20-mile tailbacks along the M20, for instance, permanently. It's a particular issue to me because I use the M20, I live down that direction, and that's not going to be fun. It also means that perishable goods will find it more difficult to get to the shops in the UK on time, and vice versa. So this is going to be a problem for trade. Chemical manufacturers in the UK for whom the EU is their major export market, of course, they too have got other problems, particularly in whether they will still be able to put their chemicals on the market within the EU if we're outside of it and not part of the European Chemicals Agency. Because under REACH, which the European Chemicals Agency monitors, those goods on the EU market will have to be registered and approved for use. There have been moves, and I think it's quite likely that the UK will still have some sort of reciprocal or parallel arrangement with the European Chemicals Agency, so there is hope that will still be possible. The more intractable problem, and it's hard to see how this is going to be resolved, is the land border that the UK has with the EU, that is between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. That is probably going to need a political resolution, because at the moment, if there is going to be a requirement for customs checks at the border, that's going to be a big problem in Northern Ireland, and in the past it's caused a lot of political problems between the UK and the Republic of Ireland. So at the moment it's not clear. The future is not clear at all, and it's coming quickly. I haven't even mentioned yet, of course, that there are parties in Northern Europe, particularly in the ports in the Netherlands, Belgium, Northern France, that handle a lot of trade, short-haul trade with the UK. They're going to be affected as well, and a lot of producers, shippers of all sorts of things, from daffodils to light bulbs, who need to get there, for whom the UK is an important market, and they don't know either what they're going to have to be doing. Maybe we should come back to this subject in about 6 months' time, and hopefully we'll have a better idea by then. But for now, that's about as much as I can say on the subject.